Grosvenor exudes boyish, buoyant good nature, but he can get quasi-mystical when he describes having faith in the sea as a sanctuary. Known for his ability to ride waves on pretty much anything, from standard surfboards to a nylon mat, he had chosen for the solstice a 12-foot foam board, on the bottom of which he had written, "Food." He had also brought along an old red canoe, which he loaded with jugs of water, trail mix, a thermos of miso soup, and tinned sardines, and anchored just beyond the breakers. "So I can eat like a seagull," he said. That's taken from an article in the New Yorker that ran on January 18th this year of my guest for this episode, Jeremy Grosvenor. The article is called Surfing into the Montauk Sunset, which featured Jeremy's sunrise to sunset solstice surfathon to raise money for a local food bank. He ended up on his board for 9 hours and 19 minutes on the shortest day of 2020. Hello and welcome to Swell Season Surf Radio. I'm your host, Karen Song, recording with the Newsstand Studio at 1 Rockefeller Plaza. For this episode, I have the pleasure of interviewing Jeremy Grosvenor. Welcome, Jeremy. So good to have you today. So good to see you after so long.
Hi, Karen. It's great to see you. It's always great to see you, whether it's on the water, on the street, or
usually
even on
in parking
camera.
Lots.
It's amazing.
Usually it's a misconnection, or like, I feel like we usually have so many plans before we actually see each other. Often they're just plans that we never actually see each other because you're like floating down the water in that direction. I'm somewhere at another break, and we just never meet each other. But somehow Stevie White sees both of us, and we never.
Yeah, he kind of connects us, and he says, "Oh, she's over there." And I'm like, "Oh, wait, I want to go over there." And then it's like, I'm slow,
already going somewhere else.
Yeah, let's go somewhere else. It's like hopscotch. Follow the leader. Yeah, it's funny.
I want to also thank you for this incredible piece of music that we're playing here. So why don't you tell us what we're listening to here? It's quite
okay. So
amazing.
I am really fascinated by underwater acoustics. I've had the pleasure, like many people from who happen to be by coastal areas, to hear fish and marine mammals speaking underwater or communicating. And I absolutely am awestruck and fascinated by it. I love it. I love everything about it. Whether it could be in dirty water, relatively dirty water, like the mouth of the Hudson under the Verrazano Bridge, like we swam amongst, happened to, serendipitously been around pods of dolphins and not seeing them, but hearing them and feeling them, and then being told from the boat as we're swimming, there's a huge school of dolphins all around you. So anyway, so I'm really fascinated by marine mammals in particular. And of course, I'm really fascinated by, focused on for a while, like are belugas, pilot whales, and narwhals. So the sounds you're hearing is a short clip of narwhals communicating. I don't know if they're talking about what they're talking about. I don't know, who knows, but I like what it sounds like.
If there's anyone who would know, it'd be you, Jeremy.
Well, Carl Safina might know, Carl Safina is like a naturalist from out here. I don't know, or writer, right? Really popular writer. And he's wrote a book called Beyond Words about animal communication. But anyway, so something about hearing sounds, especially low frequencies underwater, is amazing. And then the recordings are really good. And they're on the internet. They used to just be on cassette tapes or CDs, but now they're basically on the internet too, right? So I've been looking for narwhal sounds, and that's a very unusual sound.
Where do they usually come from? Where do they live? And what's unique about their sounds?
Narwhals live in the Arctic. So they live like in Greenland and Nunavut. I haven't been to this area, but it fascinates me. I'm really interested in cold water and ice and stuff like that. I don't do mountaineering. I can make a snowball. That's as much connection I am to the snow, but I really enjoy hearing their sounds.
What I loved about this piece also, it's kind of funny. It reminds me of like old school sci-fi Martian music. It just feels like really like electronic and, what we might hear in experimental music, but there's so many interesting sounds to it. And also this idea that, there's language. I think there's a lot of study being done with, underwater mammals and other I guess cold-blooded mammals, or what do we call them?
Marine cetaceans, maybe some of them. I think
Anyway, all the
cetaceans,
underwater creatures that this idea that I think we feel like they're not necessarily sentient beings, but to see that there's language, sophisticated kind of social systems, and emotional lives and things like that. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I mean, supposedly there is evidence for, like, researchers have found that, say, if a killer whale, an orca, is orphaned, it doesn't know how to interact with the world because it hasn't learned from its mother in the pod. So it's really interesting. So something's going on, obviously, right? I mean, with the sounds.
It makes it all that much more heartbreaking, just knowing what is happening with the oceans and the kind of deserts we're creating underwater, with all the vegetation under there and the global warming.
It's I hear you. It's definitely heartbreaking. It's great to, it's fun to hear it. It's beautiful. It's uplifting. But then, of course, there's other side to it. Maybe it's extremely melancholic. Maybe they're all
the lonely whale,
bummed out, like this is the end or whatever. But it's incredible sound. It does remind me of sci-fi films. It does remind me of, like, the theremin or analog like synthesizers,
right,
which is really intriguing. And I think it'd be amazing to hear it underwater with your ears, especially. I mean, that was with a hydrophone. They were recording it. Person was recording. I don't know the person. I'd like to meet them. Underwater with a hydrophone, right? So they're getting really rich sound. But to be, when you're, as you've, I'm sure, experienced, like if you're in Oahu or Maui, or you can hear these humpback whales singing, and it's just like, wow. It's like going to the opera in some ways, but way different.
Oh my God!
It's like 100 singers being blah.
Amazing.
So it's pretty special.
It's interesting. I know your relationship to cold water. You are a water creature. I mean, I feel like your relationship to the ocean is so pure, and that's why I've always wanted to have you on the show, because I feel like people's relationship to surfing is so singular, or to the ocean, especially as surfers, a singular motion of surfing. And we're kind of like cheating ourselves because there's so much more. And I feel like you're this perfect example of someone who really takes in the ocean for everything that it is. And so it doesn't even matter what watercraft you're in. You're literally in the water all day, every day. And it's like every time I talk to you or run into you, it's like, oh yeah, I just canoed from, East River to Montauk, and I just there's always something crazy going on as far as these moments that you have in the ocean. And I wasn't surprised to see this New Yorker article about you, of this surfathon. Like, of course you're doing this, and it just made me smile, because again, it's this purity of the relationship to the ocean, and really this keen sense of play. It's like, I feel like surfing, people are just so serious with it. And this idea that it's playing in the water and really being like water. There's so much improvisation in terms of even the crafts that you might use, and or no crafts. I mean, you do a lot of winter swimming as well, right?
Yeah, I do a lot of winter swimming, which is really enjoyable. I mean, what you've sort of covered about my, I don't know, beach boy resume in some way, or beach person, ocean person, things I like to do is I like to do a lot of different things. I like to multitask. That's probably a big problem of mine. Like, I'm prior to iPhones or whatever, text messaging, computers, like I was definitely kind of like trying to do a lot of different things always, and kind of overlays into the water. I really love the water. I have a lot of gratitude to be able to go in it a lot because we live really close to it. But it's always been my agenda for some reason. It's just really, it's visceral. Like, whether it was just to swim, be around, teach people swimming or learn how to swim with other people, interacting with water. I like the suspension qualities of it. I like the way it can float. You can float. It's nice. It's interesting to have craft in the water, whether it's like surfboards or, whatever vessel you're on. It's fun. It's just like learning something new. It's like falling off a board or a boat or a foil or whatever into the water is always an interesting experience, because it's always different for different things.
I love that you bring that as part of the experience of not just
the
craft, but falling off of it.
Yeah, falling off. I think that's really interesting, because I'm really curious. Like, I see so many images always, drenched in images of success incredible feats of these unbelievable athletes all around the world. It's amazing. I mean, if we're just strictly talking about like the synthesis of the sport, right? It's really interesting. But I'm also really interesting, not as a kook, what is it called? Kook slams, like not as a kook slam type of thing, like someone getting hurt. Oh my God, haha. But it's just like, it's just like a spin of, trying something new and then not being able to execute it or whatever, finish the desire of how you wanted to finish it. But, you end up in a different way. You end up wiping out or something. So I'm a really clumsy surfer. I really enjoy it, but I'm not that good of a surfer. I love chasing waves. So I love to experience wipeouts, and it's good for my confidence because I can become, I like no expectations, but I don't charge the way I'd like to charge. Like I don't charge the way like I see people.
I've seen you charge.
No, but really charge. Like when people like charging like waves they're never going to make. I'm so in awe of that. I'm like, wow. I'm always thinking of getting hurt. When I see people do that, I'm like, oh. But they're always fine, which is amazing. Like Bethany Hamilton, like watching her charge. I mean, she's another.
Yeah, that was a whole other level.
But that's just amazing. Like just like she's not gonna, no way she's gonna make that wave, and she just goes for it. And she doesn't make it like insane ways, right? At pipeline stuff. Right. But anyway, that's a whole different thing. It's not my language, but it's fascinating to me. So I do my thing as like a mini microscopic version of those other people.
Well, it's a good practice, like the virtues of wiping out, the virtues of, or let's maybe say like seeing the totality of the practice of surfing. It's not just what you do on the board. It's also what happens in the kind of 360 experience of it. I mean,
correct.
Like maybe we can segue into all the crafts that I know you ride, from prone surfing, serious mat surfer, all kinds of surf crafts, foiling, kayak, canoe, stand-up paddleboard. I mean, what am I missing? Sailboating, like what?
It's really,
do you windsurf?
Yeah. Oh, I love windsurfing.
That's right.
I've actually been on the beach with you when one time it was a really nice day and it was really light wind and it was super fun. Again, it's like I'm a multitasker, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I have lots of equipment and a lot of plastic. So I have a lot of plastic, petroleum-based enjoyment. So it's yin and yang. It's great, but it's also like super poisonous, right? Mm-hmm. But anyway, it gives me a lot of enjoyment. Doesn't make me a nicer person though. That's the thing. It's really selfish, these things. But yeah, so multiple crafts, all sorts of things. The thing with doing multiple crafts is when you go back to them, when you haven't used them in a long time, it's like you're back at like not 0, but maybe at 1, right? Mm-hmm. Like you feel like you kind of figured it out a little bit, but then you go back like, oh man, this is really hard.
I think that goes back to that idea of playfulness that I identify with your practice of, your relationship to the water. It's this idea of play on all these levels and not just, it's interesting because I feel like you spend a lot of time in the water, but there's also this art side. There's always an awareness of like creating something out of that. So your experimental, I don't know if you call them experimental films, but your films that you shoot while you're on the water, or the crafts that you make for the water, or, it's like, let's take this out and see what it does in the water,
It is playfulness for sure. I mean, one thing is I've been around a lot of people kind of exude that as well. Mm-hmm. Like just trying things and like whether it can be a known thing they've made, like an outrigger canoe to go to a fishing ground to actually get food for their family and sell it at a market, where it's like a really like it's a vocation, right? And there's like playing around with different materials, but it's like if something goes wrong, okay, we're just all in the water, but it's like, oh, it's kind of dangerous though, because it's not like you're close to shore, you have to figure out how to get back. So things like that, that makes sense. Where like I've been around people like who say their boat is sunk, and then they have like get back, and they're just like, okay,